Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're breaking down how 423 years of American history, our local folklore, and incredibly precise modern filmmaking techniques all crash together to create sheer terror. We're going to bridge that wild gap between the historical anxieties of the past and the exact digital tools used to replicate those fears on your screen right now.
But first, picture this. You're driving down a completely dark, empty stretch of Nevada's Highway 50. There's literally no one around for miles. And your headlights? They're barely piercing a few feet into the pitch black. Well, before we deconstruct exactly why that environment feels so intensely scary, we kind of have to understand the literal foundation of that fear.
Okay, here is our roadmap for today. We're covering 1. The expanding American landscape, 2. Highways, isolation, and hauntings, 3. Folklore adapts to technology, 4. Lighting for the darkness, 5. The sound of terror, and finally, 6. Inducing chaos with effects. We'll start with the maps and end up right inside a modern video editor's timeline.
Section 1. The expanding American landscape. So let's start by looking at how the immense and honestly rapid territorial expansion of the United States birthed these pockets of extreme isolation.
Just think about how fast this actually happened chronologically. From 13 colonies claiming independence in 1776, the country practically doubled overnight with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. Fast forward to the end of the Mexican-American War in 1848, and suddenly the nation stretches sea to sea, expanding even more with the Alaska Purchase in 1867. This massive, explosive growth created these vast, unclaimed territories where settlers were moving west, building isolated roads separated by hundreds of miles of absolute nothingness. Which brings us to Section 2, Highways, Isolation, and Hauntings. Because you see, that rapid expansion left behind these incredibly lonely, desolate stretches of highway that practically beg for folklore.
Take the famous drive on Nevada's Highway 50, which is perfectly nicknamed the loneliest road in America. If you do that hour-long drive from Austin to Eureka at night, there is absolutely nothing out there but darkness. You were totally cut off from civilization. And honestly, that geographical isolation inherently breeds psychological tension. Your mind just naturally starts filling in the blanks.
Along those lonely routes, you get historical structures, like the supposedly haunted Jackson House Hotel, acting as physical anchors for ghost stories and lingering anxiety. This place was built during the mining heyday of 1877, and it definitely holds on to that eerie vibe. When you stop at a spot like this in the middle of a vast, empty expanse, the creaking floorboards and the heavy history of the building, they just feel magnified, right? The geography literally primes us to expect the supernatural.
Moving right along to Section 3, Folklore adapts to technology. Now this is where it gets really fascinating. Traditional ghost stories actually evolved the exact moment the automobile was invented.
We didn't stop being afraid of the dark. We just updated our monsters to keep up. For centuries, folklore gave us the phantom carriage. You know, those old-world English tales of spectral black coaches pulled by headless, fire-breathing horses. But as society sped up, our ghosts sped up too. By the 20th century, the phantom carriage was totally replaced by high-speed, ghostly automobiles. Instead of haunted horses, Americans were suddenly reporting ghostly white Buicks and spectral hot rods haunting the thruways. These mechanical legends just exploded across the country. In 1905, people saw a phantom motorist racing through Pittsburgh's Schenley Park at impossible speeds. By 1911, there were reports of speeding skeletons at Devil's Bend, crashing their car into a tree and just vanishing in flames. In 1914, you had the blind tiger man running moonshine in a mystery car. But my personal favorite? Ghostina in 1917, a haunted car in Geneva, New York, that would visibly vibrate as if it was going 60 miles per hour while parked completely still in a garage. No way, right? Okay, Section 4, Lighting for the Darkness. Here's the million-dollar question. How do modern filmmakers artificially recreate the terror of those historical phantom cars on a lonely highway?
It's all about manipulation. Using lighting techniques broken down by Camp Films, creators purposely sculpt fear. They use low-key lighting to mold deep shadows and backlighting to create these moody silhouettes that totally obscure the subject. Then there's spotlighting, which mimics a harsh flashlight beam to distort faces and deliver it underexposure, which darkens the overall image and forces you to strain your eyes. It perfectly mimics that terrifying lack of visibility you'd get on a dark rural road.
Let's zero in on low-key lighting for a second.
By intentionally ditching traditional three-point lighting setups, basically throwing out the fill lights, filmmakers rely on just a single key light. It leaves the actors essentially swallowed by the dark. This creates extreme contrast and deep, impenetrable shadows. It literally forces our brains to imagine the worst possible thing hiding just outside that single beam of light.
Section 5. The Sound of Terror. Let's look at how this builds into the auditory landscape. Because honestly, what you hear is just as vital to fear as what you see.
According to Storyblocks, there's a literal recipe for auditory terror. Professional sound designers start with creepy ambient layers, wind, creaks, maybe some subtle whispers. Then they bring in risers. Think of those screeching metallic strings that build intense anticipation. And right when you're bracing for the impact, they drop to absolute dead silence. It lulls you into a false sense of security. Then, bam! They hit you with a massive stinger, a sharp, loud hit for the perfect jump scare.
Finally, Section 6, Inducing Chaos with Effects. This is about the specific digital effects creators use to induce raw chaos and disorientation.
When you dig into the technical side, game developers and VFX artists use density estimation equations and procedural Perlin noise just to generate volumetric fog. They also use a two-color, art-driven phase function for the lighting. One color for the sun or moon, another for the ambient background. So this isn't just slapping a basic spooky filter on a lens, it's a mathematically calculated system designed to simulate that eerie, light-scattering thick fog you drive through at midnight.
And when that phantom car finally shows up, editors need to simulate pure, jarring panic. In Premiere Pro, they use a precise 4-step camera shake. They apply a transform effect, scale it up to a 115 to hide the edges, and randomly keyframe the position every 3 frames. But the absolute secret sauce, step 4, cranking the shutter angle to 360 degrees. This creates a terrifyingly realistic motion blur, totally tricking your brain into feeling the physical chaos of the moment.
So what does this all mean? Well, as astronomer J. Allen Hynek famously said, ridicule is not a part of the scientific method and the public should not be taught that it is. Whether we're looking at digital tricks or centuries-old legends on an extraterrestrial highway, our fears are profoundly human. They're always worth investigating rather than just dismissing.
So, the next time you're driving down a dark, empty highway, ask yourself, is the fear waiting out there in the shadows, or did it hitch a ride with you?